Dan Pringle is an award-winning film director, writer and producer.
He has won awards for his feature films and worked with name talent such as Andrew Scott.
He has recently established a new production company called Motum Film. Good evening, everybody. Tonight we're joined by film director, writer Dan Pringle. Dan, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you, Lee. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming back. We did this recording once, quite a long recording, and then we managed to mess up the file. So I really appreciate you coming back. It'd be great to just start. Great to start if you could just tell us a bit about how you got into filmmaking.
Probably very similar story to most filmmakers out there. Kind of had it in my metadata from an early age, and just always had a passion for storytelling. I remember my mum got her first laptop, at some point in the early 90s, and it was the first computer we had in the house. And I remember I'd always snatch it off of her, and I was using Microsoft Word to sort of write stories on it, and put stuff together, and then share and try and go out and make films out of what I was writing in Microsoft Word with other kids on the street at whatever age that would have been, 10, 11. So yeah, it's always been in there, and as I've been very fortunate as I've swam through the years, I've just ended up being able to do it on a regular basis. Went to university and came out the other end of that, and have always been quite singly focused. I've deviated through different departments and roles, but as we find ourselves here in 2021, I'm getting to spend more of my time making films or being involved in writing films than not. So very fortunate.
I'd love to follow that up, Dan, quickly with an idea of just, it could be far off the mark here, but are there any similarities in terms of stuff that you liked writing about and filming when you were that age, doing it on the street with Microsoft Word scripts, and stuff you do nowadays? Are there any sort of themes that have stuck with you, or was it all about, I want to be a pirate, I want to be an astronaut, or stuff like that?
Well, I don't know. Considering my last feature film was about a serial killer operating out of a kebab shop, I probably didn't have too much experience of that when I was 10 on the street. But
you weren't eating doners and stabbing people in back alleys at that age.
I wasn't aware of problems with immigration and fascism and whatnot. But probably. I mean, I guess I've always sort of had an eye for an adventure, I'm kind of pulled towards big adventures, and that's maybe where I'm gravitating towards these days. But I probably not, to be honest, Matt. There's probably not much of a correlation besides just the sheer intrigue of being taken on an adventure or creating an adventure yourself. We used to do crazy stuff on the street. I bust a few. There was a kid down the road who had a VCR. He had the digital camera, one of the first I'd ever seen, and I remember busting that by throwing dust in front of the lens to try and create some sort of particle gun effect or something. And he obviously went back with his tail between his legs, and he had to report that a 12-year-old kid down the road had bust his mum's camera or something. There's probably not too many synergies in terms of the content, but the sense of adventure is probably still there, still present.
Dan, from your point of view as obviously being a director, how do you work with casting directors on films? Do you go to them and say, okay, this is the character, this is the look I want, that sort of thing, or do you have do they just sort of bring you ideas and you look from there? Or
well, it depends on the project. It depends on the scale of the project. Things differ from film to TV as well. But typically, it's for an independent filmmaker, you in order to get financed, you to some extent you have to play the cast game and get some talent involved that is going to excite financiers and that people are going to have some familiarity with. And that's all tied to the marketplace. And it's not necessarily every project and not necessarily every role, but on my last couple of projects, I've kind of had to play the game a little bit in the sense of casting familiar faces and casting talent that's got a perceived market value in some of the lead roles. And my casting director has had a say in that and been involved in that process and been aware of the value of certain talent and played a very crucial role in helping to build a cast that is right for the project and has the necessary skills and craft and look and demeanor for the roles that we're talking about, but equally ticks the boxes for the financiers and the producers side of things as well. But like I say, it's not every role, and then that's one way of approaching casting. And then of course the fully creative side of casting is just when you work with you brief a casting director as to what you're after and the profile of what you're trying to achieve with a character, and then you let them go off and start the process of bringing people to you that they think might be relevant or that fit the profile that you've discussed. So there's a distinction between two types of casting, I would say, and I've been involved in both equally in recent times, specifically in terms of my relationship with the casting directors that I've worked with.
Sure. Yeah, on that, because I know you work closely with Dan Hubbard, I was just going to ask a bit. So when you say that they go off and they find relevant people, do you then watch, say, the final 5 people that they've narrowed it down to, or do you see all 100 tapes?
No. When you're specifically working with a role, when you're specifically working, on a role that you're casting the net out for, and there's no restraints in terms of, they have to be a certain name or they have to have a certain profile. The way I've worked with Dan is, he knows me. He's a very talented guy. It's important to acknowledge that the casting director, it is a creative role, and all too often indie filmmakers or indie producers, are hounding casting directors, just perceiving them to be people that are going to help package their film and get it financed by getting them stars. But it is a creative role, and it's important to empower. It's important to empower your casting director by allowing them to go out and interpret the brief and come back with what they think are good options. And the way I've worked with Dan is fluid. So sometimes he'll be very, very passionate about one specific person and be like, look, I think this person's available. This person has a certain profile. I think that they would work fantastic for this based on their previous work. You should consider them and you should just make an offer. And then on other occasions, it can be the case that it's like, this is quite a specific thing, so I'm going to brief it out to agents and talent agents and agencies, and we're going to get in reels, and we're going to get in a ton of reels, and then Dan will go through those and maybe specifically select a few and say, you want to look at X, Y, and Z, and then we'll go about getting people into the room. And it's like I say, it's been incredibly fluid. There's been occasions where what we're after is so specific that Dan's just said, here's the entire lot. Here's every single video audition. Here's every single tape that we've had in. Feel free to scroll through it. I think 1, 10, 25, 110 are all worth a watch, but here's the entire database, the microsite that he creates for me, and then just lets me go through the lot if I feel like it's going to be of benefit or that we're after something so specific. But then, equally, there are times when it's just like, he's done that work and he's gone, you want to check out these 7, and he's just sent me the 7, and I've gone, yeah, there's some fantastic options here. And he said, your next stage should be to get them in the room. And then we've gone about getting those 7 in the room to see what the chemistry is like with, the other talent involved in the film, or just myself.
As you say there, you see when you work with Dan, at least a lot of the time, you come in towards the latter stages of that casting process, and you see the people that he really likes. Are there any sort of tips you can give people that are listening to this from the stuff that those people are doing right that people can learn from, or vice versa, stuff that sometimes you see in the earlier stages of casting, or just in general from actors when they're auditioning, either in the room or by tapes, that they can do better with?
Oh God, I wish I had some golden bullets for you boys. Yeah, it's one of the things for me specifically is I write a lot of very obscure roles, and I think I may have mentioned this last time I was in the chat with you. I write a lot of quite specific characters where there are quite a specific set of skills needed to pull off. I write characters that have to do different accents or have to do very specific things, in scenes, or they acrobatics or some sort of fighting style or some sort of language or dialect that's quite niche. And as a result, it narrows things down naturally. And what I'm looking for is normally inherent within those individuals. But with the broader stuff, where you look at where you're after somebody, and it's just a broader thing in terms of what someone's doing right. I mean, you've probably heard it all before, but you're after authenticity. You're aftering the truth. You're looking for somebody to interpret, the tiny amount of the script that they've seen, and come to you with what looks like an authentic representation of that character and of that moment. It's very hard to put your finger on what constitutes authenticity, and sometimes it's a heightened authenticity, or sometimes it's a subtlety, but it's just trying to do your best to get to the heart of what that character is feeling and experiencing, and present some form of authenticity. The worst auditions are the ones where there's people are trying too hard or people are pushing too much, and that might be right, or that might work for certain types of projects or certain types of directors, or certain tones of films. But for me, I'm always just looking for someone to present me something which feels real and genuine and authentic, and I can't necessarily put a label on it, but when somebody gets it, I think. And often actors don't get a lot of time to work that out, based on only getting a couple of sides and not knowing very much about the whole story or whatnot, or not even getting a very detailed character profile. So it's difficult, and I'm sure there's a lot of winging it that goes into it, but sometimes people can wing it with a degree of authenticity, and I don't know what they're drawing upon in order to get that, or if it's just luck. But yeah, that's all I'm looking for is somebody getting close to the truth of that character.
Dan, you mentioned earlier about needing a name to satisfy the financiers. With that in mind, how would unknown actors go about getting your attention? Or does it all go through casting teams, or can actors reach out to directors?
I'm an open book, Lee. Like you can find me online. I think I mentioned before. I do script consultancy for emerging writers, or and experienced writers alike. I'm an open book. I'm publicly accessible, And from time to time, I do get actors reach out to me. I don't always have the time to reply or watch a show reel or watch work. But when I do, and if I see something which is great, I'll let people know. It may be the case that I forget them, or they disappear, or I lose, I lose touch with them, or I don't necessarily remember them as I go into casting process on a new project. But that doesn't stop you from being able to do it. That does, with me specifically, and if you can, why not? I'm a massive believer that when people say, "Oh, don't berate and don't do this and don't hustle," and there are no rules. Like, sure, there are some people who respond negatively to being sent stuff cold, and that can get quite frustrated. I'm a pretty chill person these days, and if you want to send it to me and I watch it and I like it, I might send you a message back and say, cool, like, I'll try and think about you. It may not necessarily pan out, because when you get into the throngs of pre-production, I'm sure you boys will know from the projects you've been involved in, it's an absolute whirlwind. And, you kind of are empowering the different departments to do their jobs. And, I might have given Dan, for example, 12, 13 roles to cast proper. And I'm not necessarily the one going, oh, Dan, will you just hold tight on, that guy we were talking about, because there was a guy who sent me a show reel from like 2 years ago. And so sometimes it does happen. It does. I'm not saying it doesn't, but like, there's no harm in doing it. I think if you can, or there's absolutely no harm in doing it if you can. And of course, you'll know full well when you've sent someone 10 messages and they're not replying, that you're probably pissing them off or whatever. You read the room, like, but it's if you can, you go, why not? Like, I don't see any harm in the hustle. If that kind of answers things to a certain extent.
Yeah, totally. I'd love to ask you about sort of working on film sets, and the idea that a lot of actors, will not have worked on a film set till they get that big break, or maybe they've worked on really small projects trying to get showreels together, and some drama schools don't offer as much screen training as others. I remember Christian and I had a really good screen training where we went and we learned, everyone's roles on set was part of our training, so that we weren't daunted when we went on set. But a lot of people might be intimidated by that, whether that is an actor, whether that is an upcoming director. What advice would you give those people to manage that sort of level of nerves when they go on a film set, or any tips that you'd give them before they arrive, or just anything on general film set etiquette that people might miss?
Well, the first thing I would say is we're all human. Like, we're all human beings, and we have this crazy thing called the ego, which tells us where we rank in the pecking order. But that's all nonsense. That's all that's not us. It's who we think we are. It's not who we are. And it's easy for that to get the better of us when we're in social situations or in professional situations, and being on a film set and feeling like all eyes are on you, and that this is a daunting experience. But one way to flip that psychologically is is a old fashioned public speaking technique that I picked up many moons ago. You can only experience the world through your own consciousness, through your own perspective, and it's easy to think about people looking back at you and you being the focus of their attention, but flip it and think about the people in the room as being the focus of your attention, as opposed to you being the focus of theirs. That both perspectives are equally valid, and we get these nerves because we start putting ourselves in other people's shoes, but we can't actually be those people, and we can't experience their perspective. Think about the set and the people you're working with, and the space as being the focus of your attention. This is a soap opera being laid on for you. These people are here for you. These people are here to engage you and inform you and enlighten you and entertain you. You may be the one that they're all looking at in that moment, but equally you're the one looking back at them. And think about them as being this fascinating thing that you get to watch and experience, as opposed to the other way around, because it's all relative. And that's a good way, I find, to help flip any sense of nerves or professional anxiety or imposter syndrome. At the end of the day, you're just a person standing there, and it just so happens to be that everybody's looking at you in that moment, but equally you're looking at them.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I remember Anthony Hopkins was talking about having the voice on your left shoulder saying, like, you're not good enough to be here. And of course, he is who he is. So I was going to ask about, in terms of actors you've worked with on set, obviously Andrew Scott is right up there with the very best, and you work with him on silent things. What could other actors learn from him?
Yeah, I mean, I worked with Andrew briefly. I can't remember specifically when now. It was a few years ago. And he's obviously gone on to become an incredible force in the industry, and rightly so, because he's an incredibly dedicated craftsperson. And the big thing I would take away from working with Andrew is the modesty, the humility. A very grounded individual, very focused, and coming back to what I was saying earlier about understanding the truth of something and understanding the truth of a character. He completely embodied that. He was playing a character with Asperger's in our film, and it's a short, but his dedication to the research and the amount of time and energy he put in working with director Rob to understand that condition and understand the day-to-day lives of people that are living with Asperger's or autism was incredible. And he nowhere near the same profile that he does now. I mean, he was on the up then, which was one of the reasons why Rob wanted to work with him so badly. But he was incredibly focused on the work, and no ego, very modest, very humble, and unassuming. He wasn't a chore to work with. He was incredibly unassuming on set. And when he got in front of camera, he delivered the payload. But outside of that, he appreciated every department pulling in the same direction, and didn't create unnecessary headaches for people when he wasn't doing his thing. Really simple stuff, but I can't stress enough, that those are the people you want to be working with.
You mentioned, I think that links quite nicely back to when you spoke about authenticity in the audition, in the sense that, as you say, to my knowledge, he isn't someone that is on the autistic spectrum in any sense, and that is such an incredibly a subject with a huge array of possibilities, and while he may not be on the spectrum himself, having the respect and the effort to put in that level of research and detail is what separates him, and that's something you can learn. Is if you want the real thing, then what you can do is give as much respect as you can to get as close as possible to someone that isn't. And as you say, you write incredibly specific characters, so people like that bring the authenticity, but for other people it's about what can you do to get as close to that as you possibly can, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, he understands human beings. He has a respect for human beings. He's got a grounded sense about him. He's got an honest and open soul, and I think that's needed. I think that's imperative when you're dealing with that kind of subject matter. Would it happen in this day? And would it happen in this day and age? Silent Things was best part of a decade ago now. Maybe not. We're living in times now where there's a kind of a debate going on about who should be playing certain roles and whatnot. I'm not necessarily sure if this is the right place to have that conversation, but for me personally, you go down dangerous territory. You're going down. You're fighting maybe the wrong battles when you're starting to tell actors that they can't play certain roles because they don't necessarily have first-hand experience of that. We need more empathy right now in society. We live in incredibly polarized societies. We need more people putting themselves in other people's shoes to understand and reflect the way other people feel and understand how other people feel. If we start telling each other, and in this business, if we start telling everybody that only somebody who has first-hand experience of that can play that or do that, we get into a dangerous space where, to some extent, we're denying our ability to grow and understand the people that we share our societies and our world with. That's not to say that we shouldn't be giving a more diverse crowd more opportunities. I'm fully behind that as well. But at the same time, I do feel passionately that we shouldn't be going down a route with the conversation where we are saying, if you're not X, you can't do Y. Or if you're not Z, you can't do this. Because I just think you start straying into an area which is counterproductive. And again, like I say, I'm sorry, fellas, if that's not necessarily relevant to this conversation, but seems a little on topic with what Andrew did in Silent Things.
Have you ever had any really difficult actors on set in regards to not taking notes or just not listening to your direction? And if so, how have you gone about dealing with that?
I've never had anybody be. I've been on sets, not as a director, where I've seen people be difficult, and I probably, as a result of where I've seen people, throw temper tantrums or throw toys out the pram, and to an extent, I probably learned from that, and deployed my own no arseholes policy that meant that when I've been on a set myself personally, or been on something that I've been directing, regardless of if it was a short or a commercial or a feature, I don't come in, I don't have those people around, because I do my due diligence, and I'd like to think I'm a good judge of character, and I find that incredibly detrimental to my process and to the process of everybody else you're working with. I'm fortunate that I have never had to deal with that kind of thing. I've had experiences of working with actors that aren't necessarily giving me what I think is right for a role, and they're completely adamant that it should be this, and I'm like, that doesn't make 100% sense to me. I can kind of see where they're coming from, and I have one regret for one specific role and work I did with one actor where, I was quite young. I was in my mid-20s, and I kind of let them lead on it, because I got to a point where I was stopping in between takes of scenes, and I was like trying to nudge them back towards a particular direction and trying to get them to be comfortable with that. And they didn't necessarily disagree, but they just couldn't really get it, or they just didn't really appreciate it. And I in the end, I just let them run with it and kind of just accepted it. But I was never 100% happy with it. But I learned that lesson, and I think that was due to maybe miscasting not doing enough work in advance to ensure that I had the right person that totally got it. It was a situation that was born out of necessity, someone having to be replaced in a role at the last minute, and I think that may have been the result.
Yeah, I'd love to ask you, Dan, about as you say, you've changed in your process over the years, as we all do. What's the sort of best piece of advice that you've been given through those years that leads how you work now, or the best piece of advice you've learnt yourself from those experiences? And is there any advice on top of that you'd like to give anyone listening to this, or you're more than welcome to just say the first bit twice, if that makes any sense?
Yeah, okay. So, I mean, specifically in the context of acting, do you mean, and like casting, or just in general
Yeah.
for me?
As however you'd interpret that question, is you're more than welcome to take that in any direction you wish.
Well, I think I've not that I want to labour on it, but I've potentially touched on it a little already, and again, I think I mentioned it with you guys. I think I might have gone on about it previously. But I can't stress enough. I can't stress enough how the disregarding of one's ego is the greatest, most empowering thing any creative person can ever do. And the sooner you can control your ego, because you'll never be able to totally get rid of it. It's a part of the human experience, unless you're, a Buddhist monk heading towards nirvana. You're always going to be grappling and wrestling with your ego. But if you can control it and reduce it in size and reduce it in influence, it's going to put you in a great place as a creative person. And the sooner you're able to do that, the greater a handle you can get on that, the more liberating, your professional work is going to be, and your life in general. When you get out of bed and you know that you can enjoy whatever you've got in front of you in any given moment, in any given day, without your ego telling you you deserve this or you deserve that, or you've been aggrieved by this person, or you're not getting these opportunities, or this person is holding you back, or any of that stuff, you're gonna sail through life and you're gonna make great work.
Amazing. A really good book on the Ego is the Enemy by Ryan Holiday, I believe. Have you read that one?
Ain't it just, Lee?
Fantastic book. Anyway, Dan, thank you so much for coming on for a second time. Really appreciate it, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening.
Pleasure, boys. Happy to. Anytime, just shout. And good luck with the rest of the sessions you've got planned for the podcast.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to our podcast.
We hope you enjoyed it and learned something.
We look forward to having you back in the room very, very soon.